So what if the real drive behind all this accelerating tech isn't just about making life easier or even, social control? What if it's aiming at something? Well, much deeper, a fundamental shift in what humanity is.
That's exactly the territory we're exploring today. We're doing a deep dive into some sources, specifically looking at excerpts from the Profane Union, the Borg, and the Hive.
And these texts lay out a pretty bold, maybe even startling vision.
Absolutely. Our mission here is really just to walk you through what these sources claim. They suggest a deliberate, long-term plan to fundamentally re-engineer humanity itself, going way beyond just politics or social structures. It's intense stuff.
Okay, so let's unpack that core claim. The source says certain elites have this ultimate goal, not just control, but actual re-engineering of people. It calls this the final phase of their game. What does the source suggest this re-engineering looks like?
Well, what's really interesting is how the source links it directly to the concept of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It describes that as the plan to literally merge our biology with digital technology.
So not just smart homes and phones, but inside us.
Pretty much. The suggestion isn't just integration, it's a redefinition. Moving control from outside systems like laws or media to our actual biology, the described outcome. A new type of human.
Which the source calls.
The perfect compliant servant. Essentially, a drone operating within a global hive.
Wow. And the source frames this endgame, this goal, as a profane and blasphemous imitation of the divine union. That phrasing is loaded. It really sets a tone.
It absolutely does. That phrase establishes a central conflict. The text explores this idea of a true union versus a profane one. And that leads us to the blueprints the source says are being used. It identifies two queens, if you will, models for control.
Okay, two models. Let's take the first one, the social blueprint.
Right, the text calls this the queen bee and the hive. It explicitly presents the beehive structure as the elite's ideal model for society. Absolute order and efficiency.
Where the individual worker, the drone,
Exists in, and this is the source's description, mindless, selfless service to the central queen bee. The ideal is presented as a kind of zoo, a world without any real dissent or individuality.
Okay, so that's the social model. What about the technological one?
That's where it gets even more sci-fi, perhaps. The source calls it the Borg Queen and the Collective. And yes, it directly references the Borg from Star Trek.
Seriously, it calls Star Trek a prophetic text.
That's the term used, yeah. It describes the Borg as cyborgs, part human, part machine, all linked into one collective mind, ruled by a Borg queen.
Then there's that queen again.
Exactly. The source even mentions their origin in the Delta Quadrant and calls that a profane corruption of the Trinity's purpose, implying it's a twisted version of some divine, balanced creative force. The key here, technologically, is the aim for direct neurological control. Not just influence, but direct wiring.
Which brings up that contrast again, union versus assimilation.
Precisely. The source draws a sharp line. It talks about the divine union, describing it as a sacred cooperation between what it calls alpha and beta, maybe hinting at balanced masculine and feminine principles, aiming for an integrated whole state.
And contrast that with
What it labels the profane assimilation. This is framed as a hostile takeover. It even directly uses that Borg phrase, resistance is futile.
So the goal isn't cooperation, it's absorption.
According to the source, yes, forcibly absorbing individual minds, wiping out disagreement, to create this unified but, crucially, soulless drone.
Okay, if that's the goal described, how would it actually happen physically? Does the source point to any current tech?
It does. It zooms in on one project specifically, Elon Musk's Neuralink. The source identifies this project as, and it uses a specific term, the OK Club's attempt.
The OK Club, a specific group.
That's the term the source uses for, presumably, these influential elites. It claims their goal for Neuralink is to create the physical interface, the bridge between biology and the digital network.
And Neuralink's purpose in this view?
The source claims its real purpose is to imitate and replace what it calls humanity's natural divine psychic link to something called the Chi system, also referred to as the lunar connection.
So replace a natural connection with a technological one.
Exactly. Neuralink is positioned as the literal hardware required for the hive mind, the start of a direct brain-to-cloud connection.
And the implication of that connection.
According to the text, it allows these players, the elites, to bypass that natural Chi system entirely, to essentially hardwire individuals, who the source calls pawns, directly into their own controlled, profane network.
So bringing it all together, The endgame painted by this source is
For these elites, these players, to effectively become the Borg queen of a worldwide hive.
using, as the source claims, brilliant players. It names Musk to build the technology, like Neuralink.
Specifically for this profane forced assimilation.
Turning regular people, the common people, as the text calls them.
Into these perfect, mindless drones, serving them in what sounds like a high-tech prison, a technologically enforced penitentiary.
Right. That's
Yeah.
quite a picture. So, okay, we've gone through the source's perspective, the re-engineering idea, the Beehive and Borg models,
Yeah.
that stark difference between union and assimilation, and where something like Neuralink might fit in. What does this all mean for you, listening?
Well, whether you see these ideas as some kind of prophecy or maybe just a cautionary tale, they definitely push us to think critically about where our technology is heading.
And about that balance, right, between individual freedom, our own minds, and this pull towards more collective integrated systems.
Exactly. Which leads to maybe a final thought to ponder. If, as the source suggests, a true technological union needs balance and genuine cooperation, what are the signs we should look for? The subtle clues in our world that might distinguish that kind of positive integration from something closer to the assimilation described here.
Something to keep an eye on. A really interesting, if unsettling, perspective to consider.